Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, October 17th, 2024. Our goal here is to review the market generated information in a holistic fashion. We're intimately following the auctions narrative of both ES and Q. If we have time, we'll theorize and add additional commentary towards the end. Okay, perfect. So we'll start off with our summary questions of where's the market coming from and what is price trying to accomplish. Today is a day where we had our jobless claims and our retail sales data. So again, that was the most anticipated for this week. So again, Thursday was a big day for data, and we also had Netflix earnings after the bell, and a few more. Not sure if these were incredibly important to the market, but definitely Netflix has some weight to it. So earnings and data, mainly the 5:30. So where are we coming from? Do remember that we had our Monday. Excuse me. We had our Monday squeeze here on Monday, which was a holiday, completely reversed on Tuesday, stuffed on Wednesday. Ideally, the goal was to make a higher high and a higher low, which was done. It's a very ugly candle, but they did exactly what they needed to do regardless. So, um, I guess good job, well done. Same situation for the NQ, except the NQ just really wanted to get above the 5 SMA and the 50% from that impulse. So they too poke through it, but they didn't close anywhere near. So, say what you will about that. Looking at the actual daily candles for the NQ, we can see that not much traded near the lows, which was from that overnight. We were near the highs earlier, and that was completely rejected and brought us back down under the the 500s. So the majority of the volume was done between the 500s and the low 300s, which is about where we closed. The sellers, I think I don't recall of the delta mid-session. I know there's a way to look at it, but the maximum was 30, 31, 3200, and we finished negative 2000 with the minimum being 2700. So there was a big shift from really pushing with the buyers, pushing back with the sellers, and the buyers kind of pushing it back up, with the sellers really completing the day. And that's kind of what we saw with the ES, but we'll look at that in a moment. So volume was above average, more than what we've seen for the most part over the past month and some change. So nice volume and 320 points of range. For the S&P 500, we had 56 points of range, and the volume here was about average. Those sellers really were pressing here at negative 23K and finishing about negative 22K. Excellent position for the sellers. It's not like they're coming from the lows or anything like that. They're really staring down and looking at the lows from this little balance range that we're having for this week. All right, we'll look at the sector tracker. We can see that we finished basically unchanged, with technology pushing, led by energy, financials, and technology. But that wasn't enough to really get a screen. The laggards really being utilities, which I need to check to see, how they've been doing the past 5 days. Okay, they're good. So, utilities led to the downside. Real estate is weighted too much. Industrials and healthcare. I'm not surprised by healthcare. They had some poor earnings, I think, last week, if I recall. And then discretionary is basically unchanged, really communication and consumer staples. So I'm not really sure what to make of this for the day, but we do need to focus on the week. We're still up about 1% of the week, the laggards being the healthcare. So keep an eye on healthcare and technology for sure. So this is the top one and top three, though the number two is really pushing and really supporting the market. So good job, banks. Good job. All right, we'll look back at the market profile. Again, we have our composite, we have our monthly candle, and then we have our weekly candle, our weekly composite, rather. So we'll go ahead and zoom in here, and we can see our day here. Essentially just like a high normal day for the most part, bit of a strange shape. We do have a few remaining singles here. This is from the initial thrust upwards, and no real way to retest that area again. There was a lot of singles from earlier in the day. Those have been eaten through. They just didn't push down here near these, what is this, 330s and 350s or so. The majority of this volume, the value area high and the value area low for this day, is essentially just filling in some of these gaps here. So I would say, this is essentially balanced. Really not too much to say about this price action. If you put this and merge it with the week, really not too much is happening. If you merge it once more for the month, again, we just have a big ball of balance, a big ball of balance here. So we're just kind of stuck between these 19,900s to the 20K 500s, if you will, with the VPOC being near these 400s or so, which is a little bit where we're at now, just trading a little bit under it, which makes sense because if you've been following, we are still dealing with this area here, which is essentially these 300s, which is the VPOC for this composite that goes back to April. So again, we're just staying in the most traded value. This makes sense. So though it's a lot of fluctuations and a lot going on right now, we're essentially just balancing around that area, which makes sense. About the same here for the ES composite, monthly, weekly, daily. It's really not too much to talk about here. The rise up from the overnight to the all-time highs was pretty interesting. Complete rejection back into that range. I mean, look where we stopped. This is the weekly VPOC right there. I mean, I'm not sure what else you want me to say. We stopped there, pushed back up to where? I mean, that's not exactly straight, but you get my point. So essentially, we tried to retest and tried to break above the this prior week's high. Excuse me, the current week's high again. Not including the current session that we're in, but tried to push back up and try to push back up and get some more excursion above. We couldn't. And we ended up falling and closing at the damn VPOC, which is our most traded price for this week. So again, if you merge these two, it basically creates the same profile. We're just doing more of the price. We're trading more around this price that we've been trading at, which is the 58. Let's call it 90. So again, really important. No singles for ES. We'll go ahead and merge that for the week. Really not too much else to say there. So 58.90s for the ES and the 20K, let's call it 400s for the NQ. All right, perfect. Same stuff we just looked at for the NQ. These are that 400s. They really want to, will be bullish above here. I would assume bearish below, with the 300s kind of us peaking, slipping under this gray zone, and possibly pushing and challenging these 200s. If we get above these 200s, which is why I had this purple as like the line in the sand, if we get below these 200s, we definitely could spell some trouble. It may end up looking, something like this. We break under, retest, possibly failed at 300, and then we have more continuation. Notice we have these singles down here, so we can quickly find our way back to the 20K mark, which is only 400 points away right now, so it's really not that far. Here's a rejection that we saw. Again, there were some singles that were up here that they couldn't reach earlier in the week. Sold off, bear flagged, push up, tried to retest that area, failed, sold back off, and it seems that we're just kind of gliding down. I'd imagine we may find our way trading around these 200s again fairly soon. The S&P 500, essentially the same thing, except they have much more room to the upside, as they've been just much stronger. So again, they're really good until they break these 58.50s. Once they break these 58.50s, then we'll really have some problems. As of right now, we're still trading near those 58.90s at the moment. Right? I think that's where we're at even in the overnight. 58.83 is where we're at right now in the overnight. All right, and then for the intraday, looking at the footprint. So this was another day that I wouldn't consider this a trend. Essentially just bear flag for the longest. and we tried to look above, came back in. We looked below, and now we're trading a little lower in the overnight, and we're kind of scurrying back up, but we won't make this about the overnight. Really, not too much to show. Sellers really pushed here, kind of gave up and started buying a little bit, and then they looks like they reoffered and sold some more later in the day. So this was a nice, really strong push. Allowed price to drift back up, really pushed it down to kind of finish the day. That's basically what we're looking at for the ES as well, except ES had a lot of buyers here when you look at the delta, but we were looking at the DOM and we saw this in real time. There was like a offer that offered like 3,000 contracts, and there was another one. Basically, it was like two different prices that equated to maybe 4 to 5,000 lots. So this delta is a little confusing here is if you just look at the data, it doesn't tell the whole story. So yeah, the maximum was 7K, but this was really off like two occurrences. So the negative delta doesn't show as strong here. So not really sure what to make about that, but don't mind too much about the data for this one here. But same situation, sellers push, they kind of gave up, allowed price to kind of gravitate up just a little bit, and then just really hammered it down to end the day. So they really didn't get too much effort. Couldn't really trade more into the prior day's range, but they did close the gap and was able to get that settlement, that cash close as well. All right. And let's look at the 3 minute for the intraday. All right, so we have again there was a 5:30 data today, but it was pretty chill. It wasn't anything crazy, so we're not really gonna focus on the SOC for that. Let's just get our same context again, where we're coming from. We have our Sunday, our Monday rise, our Monday overnight sideways, our Tuesday sell off very steep. We had our bear flag. Again, it's the S&P 500. We ended up pushing up through on Wednesday, closing strong. Wednesday overnight, drift lower, headed into the prior day's range, completely reversed, squeezed through to make a new all-time high, weekly high. And this is where we found ourselves today. We'll go ahead and do here. 3 minute candles. We had an open drive, push down 1, 2, 3 bars, push back up 1, 2, 3, 4, rejected this mid, created a new low, couldn't push any lower, tried to push back up to get to that midpoint, failed at the VWAP bands, pushed lower for a new low, retested this midpoint, couldn't sustain it, two-way traded to the side for about an hour, 2 hours, and then pushed down lower, bear flag, till we created a new low for the day. So this kind of feels like a trend day because technically it's lower highs and lower lows. Not really sure what to make about that, but it's just not as clean as a trend day that we would like to see, something like that. But I guess technically this would be considered a trend day, if you will. But really not too much to show here from the short shot. You had your attempts to regain a short here at the IB mid. I can understand how this would be a little scary to kind of get in here, but you definitely had another opportunity here after the Euro close. So around this 9 o'clock hour, they burst through, failed, created a lower low right afterwards, reclaimed this 5 smoothing average, and they could not stay above the IB mid for the longest. So just having a tight risk above that pivot there get you a couple of points, maybe 3 or 4 points at max, at least targeting back to this IB low, at least for myself. And again, the indicator for that would be the open drive and closing lower. This new low for the B bracket, failed retest, still making lows. And at this point, I'm really done with the market for the most part. But you had a revisit leg back to that initial pivot. and they failed. So if I'm still looking in real time, this is something to really be looking out for. You did have a reclaim of this five smoothing average. I was looking at this in real time as well. I don't recall if I traded this or not, which is sad. No, I didn't. Yeah, I was kind of sitting on my hands. I was a little confused here. So you definitely had an opportunity here with this reclaim there, but there was no real pullback to really um, confirm an entry without chasing, and chasing long with an open drive and fail. Oh, excuse me, chasing with a open drive lower with lower highs multiple times. There's no way that I'm chasing this. I would much rather see a small pullback, have some tight risk in here, stop below the low, targeting the VWAP, IB mid, and maybe the high at the very latest. But I'm definitely not going against this open drive. And that's pretty much it for the ES, who I believe they were the weaker one for the day. So we won't get into the whole details, but same thing for the NQ, small drift lower in the overnight, complete catapult to the upside, though they did not get above the prior day's range or the prior week's range, for that matter. Ah, and then we had the same situation here where we had that gap up, and as we gapped up, it immediately pushed down. Same situation, lower high, which is fine, but they make they make a new low, and as that new leg pushes up, that is another lower high. But they did not make a new low here. So this kind of threw me off in real time because I was expecting them to break their low, but they didn't. And this is when they reclaimed there. And you had a possible small pullback here. But again, I would really like to see how we trade near either this body or this body candle. This was just a pretty short squeeze for the most part. Pushed through. They got up and above that period. This pivot closed above, and then just kind of drifted lower. Same thing. So again, this was NQ was definitely a little scarier to short, which is why I was trying to. I didn't trade the NQ at all today. Um, but yeah, they basically made a little bit more progress. Ticked this low for here a little later in the session, but just made a new low. Just closed pretty weak for the most part. But they didn't really trade too much into the prior day's range, opposed to the ES who got in there in the B bracket, C bracket, and even later in the day, they actually closed within the prior day's range, though just a little bit. We will consider the ES just a little bit weaker, though they did have more progress to the upside. I think this is fine for the buyers, that is, given the narrative. And just give them the same situation with the trades. I wouldn't really want to trade this to the downside on the NQ. Um, I would definitely be targeting the ES, but they too, again, they had those recoveries of the five smoothing average, but you would have to be a little more aggressive to get on that. And going against the open drive is really not something that I'm interested in doing, especially after they pushed down, broke these singles, got into the prior day's range, and it just resulted in lower highs. So I wouldn't be interested in this at all. And I wasn't in real time either, so I didn't trade it. But okay, all right, and I mean that's essentially it. So I mean, how well did the buyers do? As they have been the drivers, they've been in the driver's seat of the narrative. For the S&P 500, who was the weaker, I will give them a probably give them maybe like a 3 or 4. It was somewhat damage control. They didn't give up their whole session. They did give up all of their singles that they had. But other than that, yeah, it was pretty bad. But it was somewhat controlled. It was somewhat controlled. For the NQ, we'll give them maybe a 4 or 5. So yeah, 3 or 4 for ES and maybe a 4 or 5 for the NQ, given that they kept their singles, which now I look at it, they just deleted them. So disregard that. But if we're talking about the previous session, so the RTH for today, they did not go through their singles. So again, good job for the NQ for today's session, not the overnight. So give them maybe a 4 or 5 overall. So we'll kind of leave it there. I'm not sure what to say. We do want to be interested in these delta because they are trying on Thursday and on Tuesday. And don't forget, even these past couple of weeks of how sellers have really been trying, but they haven't been getting much result. So again, tomorrow's going to be Friday. We're going to be a bit light on data. Really not much, but American Express for the earnings. Next week, we'll have a little more weighted for the earnings and some more data as well. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it short there. Thanks for watching. Yeah, take care.